and your friends.
Freddy versus Jason.
Well, it's time for another Popcornween. This is the last of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. This is the last one we're going to do because No One Respects You remake. Get out of here. Go and get. Anyway, this is the last one, and this is 100% pure fan service. Freddy versus Jason. Everybody had been crying out for this since the 80s, and here we are. Here we are, finally, in 2003, with Freddy versus Jason. This movie took a long time to put together. It took them a long time to work out who does what, work out the script, get it put together, and get this thing on board. But man, they did, and thank God they did, because it is a wonderful, glorious movie. Earlier in a previous movie, there was Jason Goes to Hell. At the end of Jason Goes to Hell, you have Jason's mask sitting in the dirt, and then Freddy's arm comes out and he grabs it and he pulls it into the dirt, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's going to happen. Oh my God, this is going to happen. Well, it didn't. It took them a while to get it together, but they finally did. It has everything you could possibly want. It's got everything people who love Jason love: boobies, women skinny dipping, tossing blood on the walls and buckets. It's got everything everybody in a Nightmare on Elm Street series loves. It's the dream world, the crazy kills, the enjoying yourself, having fun. It's got all of it, all punched into this nice, little, wonderful, great, gory fan service. Is it scary? No, not really, but it doesn't need to be. Are there kills? You better believe there's kills. There are kill after kill after kill after kill. So many kills that I can't even describe them all in this video. But this is definitely 100% of a watch for you and anyone else, because they did really, really love the fans in putting this out. So this movie starts out with a recap of what Freddy is. Now, Peter Jackson, during Nightmare 6, wrote a script called The Dream Lover. It was one of the other scripts that were turned down by that awful woman who directed Freddy's Dead. And in Dream Lover, basically, what it was Freddy was completely stripped of any fear. Nobody feared Freddy anymore. And so, to the point where kids and even the parents would intentionally take sleeping pills at parties just to go in and kick Freddy's ass, because there was nothing he can do about it. Now, in that script, he ends up managing to kill one of the people, which put fear into everybody else, and then he came back. And so they took, in my opinion, they took part of that script and put it into Freddy's Dead. And so the beginning of it is basically him talking about how he used to rule the world, but now he has no power and he can't kill anybody. And for the first part of the movie, he can. And so what he does is he goes and he shows up in Jason's dreams as his mother to say, hey, you've come back. So it has this, you need to come back. You need to make these kids pay. They deserve punishment. And she goes, it's time to wake up. And it turns out to be Freddy. But it gives a really good introduction to Freddy's story and a really good introduction to Jason's story, to where you could just pick up this movie and not even watch any of the other ones and it still be a good movie. So at that point, it goes to Jason, and he wakes up and he gets in and he starts walking towards Elm Street, right? And then it cuts to a party of a bunch of kids, and the kids are having a party, and you've got that girl that you've seen in every movie you've ever watched, in a couple episodes of every TV show you've ever watched. You've got the person who had to start acting after Beyonce decided to leave, Destiny Child. You've got Jason Ritter, or as I like to call him, John Ritter Light, because he looks exactly like his dad. And then you've got a bunch of other teenagers that don't really matter. Those are the main characters. Those are the and then you've got the nerd that's in every teen rom-com from the early 2000s. And he's there doing what he does, playing the nerd. And of course, you've got the king of all of the spoof movies of the late 90s and early 2000s, who's the cop for this town. Those are the main characters in the movie. And so it cuts to the house, and the kids are, of course, their parents are gone, and they're in the house and hanging out. And the girl that you've seen in literally every TV show, at least an episode or two, that you've ever watched, she is kind of the main character. She looks like every other early 2000s girl in a movie. And she has lost the love of her life, who was Jason Ritter. He left, and she never got over him, and they're trying to hook her up with some other people. Well, one of the girls' asshole boyfriends comes over, and they're kind of in there hanging out. Well, Jason is stalking around because he needs to start making them remember Freddy. So Freddy is using him as a surrogate to strike fear into people and make them think that Freddy is killing again, so he can start killing people. The asshole dude comes in with his buddy, and he's dating one of the no-name girls that gets killed later. And he's like, let's go upstairs and have sex. And so they go upstairs and they have sex. And right when they get done is the first kill that we get. The first kill that we get is a Jason kill. She goes in the bathroom to take a shower, and this dude's laying on the bed. It's one of the cooler kills. I won't hit every kill in this movie because there's too many kills in this movie, but this kill was a cool kill. One of the things that you need to know about Jason, if you haven't watched the Jason series, is Jason always has really cool kills. He wraps people up in a sleeping bag, and he beat the crap out of a tree with a sleeping bag with a girl in it one time. He hung a sleeping bag up over a fire and fired that. He split a guy in half with his machete. There's just a lot of cool kills. He's had double kills with his machete, stabbing through a tree. I mean, he just has all these like super awesome kills. And this one's no different. So the guy turns around, and he's a real dick, and he goes and he thinks Jason's his girlfriend, and he turns around and looks, and he realizes it's not my girlfriend standing behind me, it's Jason. And Jason starts stabbing him in the back with the machete. You see it going through the bottom of the bed, and then right as she's coming out to check what the sound is, the bed, it's a folding bed, and the bed folds up, and he's backwards, and his back's broken, and his feet are up top, and his head is up top, and he's just dead. And she screams, and it was a beautiful kill. Everybody's kind of starting to freak out a little bit, and the town, like all of the cops and stuff like that, they're like, we don't speak his name. We've had 4 years of solace because we quarantine everybody. Any kids that are dreaming about him, we give them Hypnosil and put them in a mental institution, and they've basically eradicated Freddy. So Jason starts to strike fear in these people, and people were like, maybe it's Freddy, and they're like, you don't say that name. And so kind of the word starts getting around. Some of the kids hear the name Freddy, and they start to talk about it. And of course, the main character, she starts seeing Freddy in her dreams. And so she starts talking to people about Freddy. And so the word starts kind of creeping out. Well, Freddy goes, okay, well, maybe I can kill this dude. And so when his friend gets home, his asshole dad comes out. He's like, you shouldn't have been over there drinking. He's like, Dad, back off. Yeah, I just watched, my best friend just died. Just leave me alone. And so he sits down and he kind of falls asleep for a second, and then he encounters Freddy in his dreams. And Freddy gets to the point where he goes to slash him and nothing happens. He's like, I'm still not strong enough yet. And so the kid wakes up and his dad's sitting beside him, and he looks over at his dad, and his dad, in pure Jason fashion, his head just falls off because Jason had cut his head off. And then he turns around and there's Jason, and Jason chops him in half too and kills him. And so now everybody thinks, oh my God, Freddy's back because these two teenagers have been killed. And so word starts talking. Well, it makes the news. And so Jason Ritter and his friend, who, honest to God, looks like Danny Bonaducci's son, if I'm being quite honest with you. But they're in a mental institution, and Jason Ritter sees his girlfriend on the TV, and he's like, I gotta go save her. So Danny Bonaducci's kid gets the key card from the orderly by pretending to be a monkey, and then they end up getting out of the mental institution. And as the girl's freaking out at school, he shows up, she passes out, and the kid starts talking about how Freddy comes after you in your dreams and stuff like that. And so now the whole school's freaking out, and Freddy finally has the ability to kill people again because his name is feared yet again. What happens between Freddy and Jason? Well, let me tell you. So the girl who was the boyfriend of the guy who got killed in the bed, she and her friends go to this rave, right? And she ends up drinking too much because she's upset, and she passes out on the ground and she falls asleep. And there's this creepy dude in a rave comes up and starts like licking all over and stuff like that. Like he's gonna grape her and all that stuff. And she's in the dream with Freddy, and Freddy gets her, and he's got her in a locker, and he's about to kill her. And right as he goes to kill her, Jason in the real world comes down with his machete through the chest of the guy that was all over licking her face and stuff, and then through her, and she dies. And Freddy was like, no, that kill was mine. And so now he's pissed off at Jason. And so he's got to stop Jason, but Jason's just going around murking everybody. And so Jason comes out in this party, and it's actually cool because there's this one scene where they're in this, the football dude and one of his buddies are in the cornfield, and they're smoking weed and stuff, and they turn around and they see Jason standing behind them, and he's like, this ain't a Halloween costume party, and he starts squealing like a baby, ree, ree, ree. And he turns around, and his friend's still looking at him, and Jason takes the guy's head and turns it all the way around, and so it just, and his head's he's just standing there looking at his buddy, and then he dies. And so his friend starts running, and Jason starts chasing him. Well, he sprayed him with like alcohol, and so Jason gets set on fire, and he's running, and he's chasing the guy, and then he throws his machete, and it goes through the guy's chest right in front of all the people at the party. And then Jason just starts to murk everybody in this party, just cutting people apart, getting sprayed down with beer to get the fire off of him. He's just dismembering everybody at this party. So everybody runs and leaves. Danny Bonaducci's brother lets them drive his van to go do something, and he stays at the house. Well, he falls asleep, and so he starts dreaming of his brother. Now, this is kind of a cool cameo that you didn't know was a cameo, because you look at the guy and you think he's Danny Bonaducci, but no, he's not Danny Bonaducci. He's actually the bully in A Christmas Story. So that kid that was going around and pushing the brother, I can't put my arms down, I can't put my arms down, the one that pushed him over in the snow and was tormenting the main character, he's actually a fully grown adult in this. And so he had ended up killing himself. So his little brother walks in the bathroom, and he sees his brother over in there, and he's like, his arms are all slit open, he freaks out, and then these things come up and grab him by his foot, and he realizes Freddy's there, and he's like, you're gonna tell him, you're gonna make an example. And he's like, no, I won't. And then Freddy goes, okay, I'll have to send the message myself. So they come back with the car, and he's in the room, and they're trying to wake him up. And then we have this kind of cool Nightmare on Elm Street, the original movie scene, where he's getting dragged all over the place, up onto the wall. His back catches on fire. You can see Freddy's back burned into his back. He runs his face into the window where the kids are looking in, and he goes, help me. And then you see these 4 cuts just right across the front of his face. And then he dies, right? And it was really cool. That was one of the cooler kills in the movie. They end up going to get Hypnosil, and they realize that Jason's there and Freddy's there, and they have to try to end this. So in order to do that, they need to stop dreaming. So they got to go get this Hypnosil, and so they go and they break into the mental facility. Well, in the mental facility, Jason shows up, starts murking him. He murks the sheriff's deputy. So Freddy has to get rid of the Hypnosil, but he's not in the real world, so he has to take over somebody in their dream. So there's this one stoner kid, and this worm comes in, and he starts smoking weed with him, and then the worm goes down his throat, and Freddy possesses the kid. And so they see him dumping all of the Hypnosil into a sink, and they're like, no, we need that. Freddy needs to get a hold and try to kill Jason, so he possesses this kid, and he gets these 2 tranquilizers. Well, there's this one part where everybody's running from Jason, and they're like, come on, man, come on. And they're talking to the kid. He's just got this sinister look on his face. He turns to Jason Ritter and he goes, let me handle this bitch. And then he holds these 2 huge syringes full of tranquilizer, right? And he takes the 2 syringes and shoves it in his traps and just tranks him, right? And as he's getting tranked, he cuts the kid in half, and then he's asleep. This is where the real awesomeness starts. This is where the real fun starts, because you have Freddy versus Jason in the dream world. The first fight for Freddy versus Jason, and it's brutal. Freddy's having a hard time really doing damage to Jason because Freddy operates off fear, so he doesn't know what he's afraid of. And so they go back and forth. There's this one part where he starts playing pinball on all the different pipes in the boiler room with Jason, and it's cool because he's like, yeah. There, I did it for you, Kyle.
Don't you know I'm loco?
And ping, 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 and ping, 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 and
Ping, 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 and ping, 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 ping.
ping, ping. And so he's ping, 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 and then he drops some on, and then of course Jason can't die, so he just throws it off. And so he comes running up to Freddy, and he's about to hit him with his machete, and there's water that's broken and it's pouring down in front of him, and he stops. And then Freddy realizes, and he actually says this, so there is something you're afraid of after all. And so he surrounds him with water and starts to drown him, right? And then in the dream world, Jason turns into this infant. Well, the whole time, they're out there driving Jason to Crystal Lake because they figure if they can get Freddy out of the dream world, because we did it in A New Nightmare, or we did it in Freddy's Dead, and they did it in the original, and everybody's seen the original movie, so they know the easiest way to beat Freddy is to get him out of the dream world. So if they can get Freddy out of the dream world, which is the main character girl is the one that's going to do that, at least they'll be in Crystal Lake. So if Freddy wins, they won't be on his turf, and it'll be unfamiliar. But if Jason wins, they'll be able to, get him in the water. So they figured Jason would have an easier time beating Freddy on his own turf. And then if Freddy ended up beating Jason, Jason's already at Crystal Lake, they could put him in the lake. And so it was kind of a win-win situation to go to Crystal Lake. So they're driving to Crystal Lake. Well, while they're doing that, the girlfriend's like, I got to go to sleep. I got to help him. Well, she's dreaming. There's this one part, and it's probably one of the coolest things in the movie, but there's this one point at which Freddy sees her in the water while she's dreaming, and he's like, it's you. And then she gets out of the water and she gets on the deck, and he comes jumping out of the water like this. He's like, and just way up in the air. And it was all slow-mo, and it was just a cool scene. But she lets them trank her so she can go to sleep, and they can wake her up when they get to Crystal Lake when she has Freddy. And then, of course, Jason is, passed out because of the trank, and they keep getting him more tranquilizer while they can get there. Well, while he's doing that, he's drowning in the dream, and so he's coughing up water. And there's actually a scene where they're like, somebody needs to, help him. He's going to die. We can't have him die before we get to Crystal Lake, otherwise he's going to come back. There's this one thing where Kelly Rowland gets nominated to peel off his mask to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and it's just a wicked, creepy scene. But anyway, they get to Crystal Lake. Jason wakes up. He breaks out of the truck. Everybody scatters. They can't wake the girlfriend up. They're still a little bit away from Crystal Lake, so they pick her up and run her over there. They put her in this cabin. Well, Jason breaks into this cabin. He's gonna kill everybody, right? And then right as he does that, she gets a hold of Freddy in the dream, and then she wakes up. And when she wakes up, Freddy's on top of me. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you, bitch." And then she points over there, and he turns around and he stands up, and now they're in the real world. And it's Jason and Freddy in Crystal Lake in the real world. And so they start fighting, and dude, Freddy's just like ninja warrior, kicking him, throwing knees to the body, knees to the face. Jason takes him and breaks out all the windows with Freddy's body, and they're just messing each other up, right? And so all the kids run out of there. The nerdy kid gets stabbed, and he ends up dying in the forest by saying, "No, just go, I'll be fine, leave me here." And there was a scene at the beginning where he went to talk to the main girl, and Kelly Rowland was like, "Dude, nobody wants you, like, you're a nerd. Stop hitting on her." And he ends up basically making her feel bad about herself, and she's got like a real image problem. She wants a nose job, all this stuff. He just absolutely levels her from a verbal standpoint and takes her down a couple notches. He's like, you're not even good enough for yourself. Like you think you have all these problems. And there's a point in all this fighting where he gets stabbed on the back, and he's laying down on a tree, and she actually kind of respects him because he stood up for himself, right? And so he's like, no, just go. I'll take care of it. And he does what every nerdy, friend guy that's in the friend zone does. And he says, "I'm fine, just go." And then he immediately dies after she leaves. And so now they're in kind of an open space where there's trees. Well, Kelly Rowland's standing there, and Freddy's like, "Oh." So Freddy starts walking towards her. And so she decides to do the same thing that the nerd did to her, to him. And she's like,
"What kind of faggot runs around in a Christmas sweater?"
She's trying to emasculate him, right? Jason has this big, giant knife, and you have this little itty. And then Freddy just is standing there, and it kind of looks like he's taking it to heart. She's trying to reduce his power, and he just looks at her and he goes, and she turns around, and Jason's standing behind her, and Jason just hacks her, and she flies into a tree, and she's dead. It was a great kill scene. It was really fun because you thought Freddy was going to be like, "Screw you, bitch," and go after him, but nope. He used Jason again as a kill. Freddy and Jason end up in the second major world fight, which is in this construction area, right? So they're just throwing blows back and forth, and Freddy falls down, and his claws hit this gas tank or something like that, and then the gas tank flies like a missile. And so Freddy goes, "Oh, okay, I'll do this." So he goes to a whole rack of them and starts chopping off the stuff, and he starts sending these like missiles at Jason. And then they hit him, and then they get in this construction zone. There's this really cool scene where Freddy dumps rebar on Jason, and it just slices through him. I mean, for the vast majority of the time, Freddy was jacking up Jason, but Jason's huge, and so it's kind of like speed and precision versus brute strength, right? And so he's hitting him with this cement mixer, and then he tries to roll this trolley full of sand down at him, but it gets stuck. And then Jason ends up getting him and starts beating him up a little, and then as they're both fighting, they get hit by this trolley and get ejected into the back end, right? And so once they're done with that, then they end up on the dock. And so now they're fighting on the dock. And dude, the dock scene is brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Freddy gets his blade, and he's hitting him with his hand, and he's hitting him with his blade, just chopping the shit out of his back. And it's bloody. Everybody has blood on them and gore, and they're just messing each other up. And they go and they start. Freddy's missing his glove arm, but he's got the machete, and as he's being choked by Jason, he's shoving Jason's machete into him, and they're basically killing each other, right? They end up killing each other. While they're doing that, the Jason Ritter and the girl you've seen in every television show you've ever watched essentially filling the entire dock up with gasoline. and then they end up lighting it, and it blows up, and everybody flies into the water, right? Well, then there's a scene where they're on the docks, and then all of a sudden you see Jason walking up to him, and he's walking, you see his machete down there, and you see the pants, and he's taking step, and then it pans out and backs up, and you realize it's not Jason, it's Freddy. And Freddy's standing there, no arm, fucked up, and he's gonna kill this bitch. And so he takes the machete and he lifts it up, and Jason comes up behind him and shoves the glove, his Freddy glove, on his Freddy arm through his chest, and he falls down, and then he hits his knees. Jason falls back into the water, and then she gets up and she decapitates Freddy, and it's over, and they're done. And then they go home, and in the final scene, you see Jason walking out of the water, and he's got Freddy's head, and Freddy's winking, letting you know there's still another thing. Now, there were some alternate endings to this. There was one alternate ending where she ends up going back, and she's a virgin and all that stuff, so she's finally getting slap freaky with Jason Ritter, and they're gonna be a couple forever, together forever, happily ever after. And then you see Jason Ritter up there, and you see these knives come out of his finger, and he slashes down, and that's the end of the movie. There was also another ending, and this is the final point I'm gonna make, probably one of the coolest parts that never ended up happening. But Freddy vs. Jason almost ushered us in an entire new fan service genre that never ended up coming out to be. There is another rumored alternate ending where Freddy and Jason were dragged away by Pinhead, right? And so there was supposed to be this conglomeration of Jason, Freddy, and Pinhead at some point, and that never materialized. And then people started talking about Mike Myers, Evil Dead, and having all of these people come together. And they were seriously talking about it, and they were talking about doing it. And the closest they ever came was because none of the studios, it's different studios, and it's different people own the IPs. And so it's hard enough to get a team to come together under one studio. To get 3 or 4 or 5 to come in and use their IPs in the same movie is even more difficult, because people want their people to win. They don't want to damage the IP. They don't want to make another IP look better than theirs. And so it just kind of never happened. But there was a comic book that came out with none other than Freddy, Jason, and Ash from Evil Dead. And there's like this whole comic book series about it, and basically Freddy is trying to use the Necronomicon to give him more power, and it seems, I haven't read it, but it seems like a pretty cool comic book. But they were potentially talking about that, moving it to a movie. Now, everybody's kind of older, they're gonna have to recast everybody, but if they do a good job, like Jason's mom, if you watched it, you would think, oh, it's the same person. But they did such a good casting. The lady that played the original Jason's mom didn't want to do it because there wasn't enough screen time for her to do it. Women, am I right? So they recast her, but they did it beautifully. When I first watched it, I thought it was the original Jason's mom, but it wasn't. So if they were able to cast that right, they could theoretically start doing all these crossovers. I think the time has passed to be able to do it. With this entire series, it's awesome. I love this series. It's my favorite horror series of all time. And when you look through this stuff and you find out that there were so many awesome things that could have come out that just people couldn't agree on, or scripts were cut, or they didn't want to spend that much. I mean, this movie cost like $28 million to make, something like that. And it ended up making like $108 million, which the only movie of either Jason or Freddy that beat that was Dream Master. This movie made enough money to get people to want to do it, but they just couldn't come together. And it just kind of sucks when you have all these different corporations that just can't agree on stuff. And there could have been an entire horror genre of nothing but fan service. What happens if this person meets this person? What happens if this person meets this person? And it could have been awesome, but it never was. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. The deal's still on with the Freddy's Dead. If that hits 1,000, even if it's a year from now, I will do the dramatic script reading. But that is the end of the Nightmare series. I had a blast doing this. I got 2 more. I think I'm gonna do the Frighteners, and I think I might do movie called Brain Scan. I don't know. We'll see. We went through the entire Nightmare on Elm Street, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I will see you guys on the next Popcornween, and thank you so very much for helping me to kick the crap out of all my coworkers because they super jelly. And
Bing, 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 and bing, 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 and bing, 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 bing.